So as I said in my previous video, yesterday was baking day, and I ended up using my sourdough discard that I didn't want to let go to waste. Sorry about the airplane. I'm hiding outside because my kids are being crazy. I ended up using my discard that I didn't want to go to waste, and I made these wonderful hamburger buns. And we're gonna have hamburgers tonight. So I'm excited. They're delicious. The kids really like them. And they're easy, they're simple, they're a lot more cost efficient when you actually compare the price of these versus the price of what you would get in the store. For example, these are just Walmart's website. Here you've got a 4-count for $6.47, which is gonna come out to like $19.41 for 12, not counting sales tax. Come over here, here's another kind that's a little bit cheaper. That's $5.48 for a 4-count. Again, that's $16.44 for 12, not counting sales tax. And honestly, these are better. It's so much better. It's delicious. They're soft. And so I found that a lot of times when you're doing hamburger buns that are gluten-free, that either your hamburger buns are super, super thick and tough and crunchy, and it's hard to bite down, or they're falling apart and crumbly, or they're like flat and cardboard tasting, and these are not that. They are delicious. They are amazing, and I cannot wait to have hamburgers tonight. But first, for anyone who's new here, welcome. My name is Melissa. This channel is dedicated to celiac-safe, gluten-free tips and recipes. Follow along for more and drop a comment for any tip or recipe that you think I should try. With the kitchen scale, measure 135 grams of warm milk, 225 grams of water, 30 grams of vegetable oil, and 38 grams of sugar, and then mix those together and set them aside. Next, weigh out 195 grams of brown rice flour, 240 grams of tapioca starch or arrowroot starch, or a combo of the two, which is what I used here because I ended up running out of tapioca. Please don't mind the bowl. Like I said at the beginning, it was baking day, and I didn't want to have to wash dough out of the bowl just to put more dough back in. Next, you add 12 grams of psyllium husk powder, and then 38 grams of sorghum flour. You could probably use millet flour as a substitute, but I haven't tried that myself. If you try it though, let me know how it does. For the last bit of your dry ingredients, you're going to add 3 teaspoons of xanthan gum, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, and then 2 1/4 teaspoons of salt. And then you're gonna whisk that all together. And I recommend actually using a whisk. I normally just whisk with a fork, but I found that the psyllium husk fiber, the psyllium husk powder, likes to clump together if I don't use a whisk. Now you're gonna add 300 grams of your starter discard, your sourdough, gluten-free sourdough starter discard. I gave it a good stir so that the consistency would be even. This is a great recipe to start with on baking day because you can use up some of the discard before you feed it, some of your starter before you feed it. Then you can feed the starter you have left and then get that all happy and ready to make bread with. Now we're going to add 2 large eggs, and then we're going to add all of our wet ingredients that we've mixed up before into our dry and sourdough blend. And then you're going to add 11 grams of active dry yeast in this stage as well. Now you're going to mix it with a stand or a hand mixer with dough hooks for 5 minutes or by hand for 10 minutes. The longer you mix it, the smoother your tops are going to be. Speaking of, for those of you who have a stand mixer, is it worth it, the investment for it? I've got my hand mixer and it's been serving me pretty well. Most of the things that I need to mix, I don't mix for very long, but I really want a stand mixer. Part of me thinks being able to walk away would be nice. I would recommend as soon as you're done to go ahead and wash the dough hooks off because this stuff will dry very, very firm. Then we're going to line an extra large cookie sheet with parchment paper. Next, you add brown rice flour to a clean tabletop and some vegetable oil to a bowl because you're going to be oiling your hands to manage the dough. So with oiled hands, scrape the dough from the bowl onto the floured surface, trying to keep it as together as possible. Go back for more oil to rub onto your hands anytime the dough starts sticking. Now you're going to turn the dough over into the flour just a little bit to coat the outside to make it a little easier to manage, but want to avoid like kneading more flour into the dough. And then you're going to form it into a log so it's easier to cut. This is a very soft dough, and so you should be able to pull it, stretch it slightly with very, very little pressure. And just keep oiling your hands as you need to so that you can manage it. Now you can take your knife, you can add a little oil if you need to, or some water to the outside edge so that the dough doesn't stick quite as much to it. But you're going to cut your dough into 12 equal pieces, as equal as you can make it. But if you need to take some from your bigger chunks to put with your smaller chunks to even it out later, that's okay. You can do that. It doesn't mess it up. Now you're going to take each chunk with freshly oiled hands and roll them into disc shapes, little flat, patty shapes. You're not pushing down, you're not making them super, super flat, but if you make big ball things, they're going to come out more like rolls. So go ahead and flatten it just a little bit, and then you're going to place each one on your parchment-lined sheet pan. You want there to be a little bit of space in between each one. I would say if you've got an extra large sheet pan, then you can put them all on and then make sure they're spaced evenly. They will rise a little bit, and then they can stick together if they're too close. But I mean, if that were to happen, it'll be okay. They'll taste great. They just may not have quite the same edge. Also, you see me trying to pinch these cracks closed. If you have cracks in your dough as you proof it and you bake it, those cracks will split very, very easily later. They won't have quite the same seal as the dough that doesn't have those, the flour in between the cracks. After you have them all laid out on your sheet pan and spaced evenly, you're going to cover it with a kitchen towel and then let them proof for an hour. I normally will put these somewhere, stable temp-wise. If they're next to a door, a draft, and they're not going to rise quite as well. I like my microwave, but you can put it in the oven if you need to. Before you bake, take an egg and scramble it up with a fork and then brush it over the top of each of your buns. You're not trying to soak them in egg. You don't want it tasting like scrambled eggs, but you want a nice coating over the top and maybe a little bit on the sides of each bun. That's going to give it that nice golden brown color. Put a cake pan full of water on the bottom rung of your oven and then put the buns in at 375 for 25 minutes. Then take the water out and cook for another 5. That's what's going to kind of crisp up the edges a little bit. Brush the top with melted butter as soon as you pull them out, and then put each one on a cooling rack. They're fine to use and delicious warm, but they cut better after they've cooled. And when I say that these are delicious, I don't mean these are a good option if you have to go gluten-free. I mean, these are delicious. And as a bread, it doesn't take, a terrible amount of time if you want to make it the day you're going to use it. But you can also make them the day before and store them in the fridge, and they'll keep for a few days. I don't know exactly how long because my kids eat them up. And here they are. I stored them in a bag in the fridge, and they're great. This is straight out of the fridge. So imagine toasting them just a little bit so they're a little bit warmer, and then you can cut them in half, and then you can put your hamburgers in. I'm excited. They're delicious, and I hope you enjoy.